Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, aka the Cover 3 Tailgate, where Ben says we need a West Virginia Iowa State breakdown. Yeah, we got a little Big 12 corner coming in big game breakdown a little bit later. And long time, season ticket holder VIP in the tailgate, Isaac points out that coal is trading at $119 per ton, while corn is trading at $155 per ton. It makes you think.
I can buy a ton of corn for only $155.
Huh. Where are you going to put all that?
I am thinking.
Tom?
I've got don't worry about how I do my thing. Just
you remember when we had the meat deal, and like you didn't have the freezer room because they kind of like they shipped it to us out of the blue one day, so we didn't like clear out the freezer and just passed it out. Like Tom, same.
I'm gonna go make some friends around the new neighborhood here with ears of corn.
Let's see here. This is what we could do here. Yeah, coal versus corn. The West Virginia Iowa State battle is like undoubtedly one of the more interesting and intriguing matchups that we've got ahead on the Week 7 slate. So we will get to all that, as well as any more notes on Ohio State, Oregon. We talked about it on the CBS Sports Network show a little bit. Ole Miss traveling to LSU, of course, Red River Rivalry, and so much more. But I wanted to at least like pose a question here, because sometimes, just to be honest, I enjoy talking about some of these issues with you guys because I respect your opinion, and it helps me formulate what I'm going to say when they put me on the spot, at other places all around the country. Because earlier this week, we got the news that Georgia wide receiver Colby Young was arrested early Tuesday morning on misdemeanor charges of battery and assault on an unborn child. Now, it was Colby Young, a woman who has been identified, according to the police reports, as Colby Young's ex-girlfriend, showed up to his apartment just before midnight on Monday night. And his attorney has said Colby Young was arrested last night after he asked his ex-girlfriend to leave his apartment. He did not make, this is again, Colby Young's attorney, via ESPN. He did not make physical contact with her in any way that could ever be considered a crime. I expect Mr. Young to be fully exonerated once our investigation is complete and the truth is revealed. The police report includes Colby Young trying to forcibly get his girlfriend out of the apartment. I'm not great at breaking down the police report. That is not what our job is here. My thought is, how do we continue to process another Georgia off-field issue? Currently, the stance from the athletic department is that, it is an ongoing legal matter.
I'm not getting into the report. Like he's accused of dragging her out by the arm first, and then apparently he goes back in his room, locks the door, and then after she got on the phone with a friend, he came out and he wrapped his arms around her torso, and she said squeezed and removed her from the area. It's like, I don't know what there is to really say about it at this point. Like Kirby will come out and say, well, when you've got 130 kids on your team and they're all this age, things are going to happen. And it's true, they will. And it's just, they keep happening at Georgia. And then he says, he's going to take responsibility and say it's on him. He's got to do a better job, etc. And maybe he does, but he's also been saying that quite a bit in the last few years, and it keeps on happening. So at some point, you have to ask yourself, is it what I'm doing or is it who I'm bringing?
I think that's well put, Tom. I have not really looked into the details of this, just been doing hurricane prep, so I don't have a lot of thoughts on that.
I don't like doing that in general. I don't like trying to pick apart a police report and trying to assign blame one way or the other. But this is something that has former players coming out and having discussions. Former Georgia star Brandon Boykin, I heard him say that this is becoming the reputation of Georgia football, that every single time there's a new story like this, he gets text messages. I also hear Aaron Murray, former Georgia quarterback, who is very firm in his stance that this is not a Kirby issue. And I don't know if I'm all the way with him on that. He is continuing to put the responsibility on the players in that locker room. There's I mean, there's a little bit to pull apart with this, I think, in terms of the big picture when members of the Georgia football family are speaking out as well.
Have you had guys who played for Kirby speaking out? Because Boykin would have been a Rick guy, right?
Right. And same with Murray.
Was a
And
Rick
Murray,
guy.
obviously, Rick guy. Yeah. Look, I honestly, I don't really have a problem with Georgia evaluating each incident on its own merits and doing the due process thing, because I kind of doubt that Georgia knows what happened, and they'll find out as it plays out. I think the bigger issue is exactly what Tom said. It's like, why does this keep happening here? I know some folks in the chat said this looks like less like Saban 2.0 and more like Urban 2.0.
Right.
I kind of have to agree with that. Ultimately, so I mean, if what's alleged, like, I think the guy's got to go.
Yes,
most likely. But
sorry, excuse me. If I was the head coach of the Georgia football program, and
that's what I'm saying,
what's alleged plays out, I think that there's I'd be like, this is it, guys. Like, and I don't mean to say this like you're jeopardizing. Like, we got to tighten this thing up. It's about who you are. It's about how you carry yourself around the Athens community. It's about how you carry yourself and the standard you're setting for yourself as a Georgia football player. If it's becoming the reputation, then flip that reputation. Like, you almost have to go even further to make sure that these things do not continue to happen. Like that, man, it feels unfair, but like, who in that locker room is going to step up?
Right. Exactly. It's also, I mean, they did boot Ra Thomas, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm trying to recall that. So like, I hope that they would be consistent with their approach in that if it's found that he did what's alleged.
Both were transfers, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because Georgia has, on the football side of things, the one position that Georgia can't seem to recruit out of high school and develop is receiver. It's been like a huge black hole in otherwise like sterling, development operation. Maybe character development has a little ways to go, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like, this is where I don't like, the driving stuff is bad, right? But this is different.
Yes.
Like, is Georgia, are they having more of this? Like, the driving thing, like, they're the nation's leader in the driving stuff by like a million miles, Is more going on there like this? It seems like it's clustered recently. So maybe it is. Or maybe it's more high profile, right? Like, I don't know.
Like I said, I think you just have to put a little more emphasis on who you're bringing in instead of just how good they are at football.
You have a great opportunity at the University of Georgia to set yourself up for life if you don't do things like this, and I'm not singling out Colby Young, but I'm saying, like, in general, if you don't run, if you are finding yourself as a member of the Georgia football program, like, it doesn't matter if you go to the NFL or not. Like, if you contribute, Athens will take care of you for a long time. It's one of those places, right? And so that's I don't know, something that it's not always the most fun thing to talk about, but it is a story that has been going on for really more than a year, with this Georgia football program kind of humming in the background of the Bulldogs. As we're sitting here Wednesday, 11 a.m., like, I'm not changing my damn handicap on the Mississippi State game based on the availability of Colby Young, but we haven't heard something one way or the other. We'll of course update you anything more as we continue to get updates. All right, from a kind of difficult story to talk about, let's get a little more football-y. Let's get a little bit more in the nitty-gritty and in the weeds on this, because USC linebacker Eric Gentry, somebody who Bud correctly identified as they really missed in the Minnesota game. We remember that he played great in that Michigan game. He had the punch-out fumble. He did a good job of sort of directing things in the middle of that defense. We found out that he's actually been dealing with concussions. Lincoln Riley telling reporters that they're trying to figure out what he's going to be doing in terms of the rest of the season, that there might be a redshirt this year scenario on the table for Gentry? If that's the case, Bud, like what are we doing in the middle of this USC defense?
Yeah, that's a pretty significant loss in my opinion. Like one of the reasons why USC played better defense to start this season than I thought they would is like the coaching upgrade was quite real. But it can't just be the coaching upgrade. Like you got to have certain guys playing like you need them to play. And Gentry, was it 2 years ago, played like exceptionally well for USC, and then last year did not. And this year he was playing pretty well. Now you still have Mason Cobb. Okay, you still have the guy with the hyphenated name,
Cardenas or
yes,
Mascarenas Arnold.
Mascarenas Arnold.
Yeah.
Or yeah. And both those guys are pretty solid players. But like Gentry is a different type of player and a guy that kind of changes what their defense can do. You have Anthony Lucas who's playing pretty well, but like him and Kamari Ramsey are kind of the two special guys in the back end. And so far, like I don't think that they have somebody else who can really replace Gentry.
Yeah, Gentry played really well in the LSU game. He played really well in the Michigan game, and now you're not having him for however long. It's a big blow to their defense because like the coaching upgrade is important, but the bigger problem when we talked about it with USC the last few years, it wasn't just the coaching, it was also the players. Like you don't really have incredible depth of talent on that side of the ball. So while you're still trying to develop that with all the changes you've made, to lose one of the key parts of that, a senior who's not only good but has plenty of experience playing for you, so somebody you can kind of rely on in those spots to know what he's doing and to help get the defense in the right situations and spots, that's going to have an impact on Saturdays, much bigger than if it's maybe just like a third corner or a defensive event. You know what I mean? It's just it's a
totally
big loss in a lot of ways.
Let's stay there on the defensive side of the ball to one of USC's biggest rivals, Notre Dame, announcing this week that its sack leader, Boubacar Traore, is done for the year. The sophomore edge rusher suffered a knee injury in Notre Dame's win against Louisville. This was coming into the year. We had talked a lot about the Notre Dame issues on the offensive line, and now we're just starting to get a little bit of a walking wounded list here. Tom,
I mean, it's not good. Obviously, he's leading the team in sacks, and he's been a very good player. He's very young too. He's a freshman, but I do feel like the difference in the situation is, I think Notre Dame can afford to lose him more than like USC can afford to lose Gentry. So in that situation, it sucks, and there's really no way of getting around it. But I do think the Irish are in a better situation where they can figure out ways to make up for the loss and get around it and replace some of that production. But he has been very good, and it's just it sucks more for him, I think, than the team is how I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
So who are they running out there now? It's like, I mean, RJ Oben.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think who else is like
on the edge. Well, you got Cross on the edge.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's an NFL player. Like a lot of people would like Howard Cross on the RJ Oben. Like
they're more. I mean, like those. Yeah, Oben's kind of your kind of twinner guy. Okay, so Junior Tuilamaka. I can't say the name. I apologize, but and then Burnham as well.
Tui Alamaka, I believe, is the correct way to say it.
It probably does knock their ceiling down a little bit, because they have to have this defense play otherworldly if they're going to make a run at the playoff and potentially a run in the playoff. Like you need to have guys like this, and they already lost, as you noted, Bethello, right? Mm-hmm. So like that does start to add up. I agree.
Yeah, and finally, Shiloh's back. What do we do? What are we doing to Colorado's defensive rating? Up. I mean, that is the Ed Reed of the Colorado defense.
I mean, they played extremely well without Shiloh Sanders. I was kind of like joking when I said I was going to upgrade them without Shiloh Sanders, but like a model who doesn't know who's in or out has upgraded Colorado's defense over the last couple games without him. So
just based on performance, like we've just inputted the data and we've gotten it out, and it's going up. So
I mean, maybe Tom was onto something there.
Just saying, it's like when I would watch the tape, I'd be like, what are they doing with this guy? It is not working. But yeah, like if you look at how things have gone, they've won all 3 games he didn't play. And I'm not trying to I'm just gonna say so, but they also faced offenses that I don't really think are great passing offenses. So was it Shiloh or was it just the teams that they were playing? I don't know, but I would just say that I don't want to. The clearest way I can say is I don't think Shiloh is a bad player. I think they ask him to do a whole lot more than he's capable of doing.
Like carry the defense in a way that Shador carries the offense. Yeah, makes sense.
I think he's a perfectly okay player, perfectly good player who would play well if you put him in the right situation, and I do not think they are putting him in the right situation.
Makes sense.
Is he in charge of like calls?
Shoot, somebody told me that he was. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Like,
I mean, they haven't, to my knowledge, they haven't been missing a lot of calls in recent weeks.
The defense has been better. That game, they're going to massive game. They're playing host to Kansas State. Any other injury updates or other things? Because I mean, like Thursday when we get into locks, we might mention an injury, but it's like fast and furious. Anything else you got your eye on, bud?
Daniel's potentially back for Stanford.
That's big for the Notre Dame game.
In the press conference that their coach said he expects him to play. Looking here down the list, other guys who could be injured. So I don't really know what to think about the USF quarterback Brown, if he's going to play, if that game's going to get played on like you saw they moved it from Friday
to Saturday. Yeah.
Who knows like what that's going to look like? Maybe by Saturday you can play a game. Maybe so, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm trying to think what else here.
Well, as I've said before, for locks and wagering purposes, I do not invest in Hurricane games.
No,
I just bad vibes. I don't want to have any part of that.
For LSU Ole Miss, Trey Harris, I think is a really important one to watch. I read on Monday that he was, if the game was like they did the whole like if the game was today, he couldn't play type thing, which I don't really know what. Like, how do you read that? Does that mean he couldn't play? Because the game's not today. The game is on Saturday.
They force him out on the field and be like, all right, pretend you're playing a game. And he either says, I can or I can't.
Right.
That's how you judge it. But Chip, going back to the not betting on Hurricane games, what if Brian Kelly's involved?
Oh,
that's one situation I'm willing to do it.
Then we just get very specific. Pass attempts over. Okay. we go and we get pass attempts over, because then I'm not like riding the emotions of the fan bases or the players involved and them are like me trying to capitalize financially on whether or not you're thinking about your families. Like I don't want any part of that. But yeah, if it is a cold analysis, like is a Brian Kelly coach team playing in the middle of hurricane or gale force winds, then yeah, we go pass attempts over. That is just from the historical record. Didn't Trey Harris? Did he get banged up in the South Carolina game?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Okay.
Other stuff looking here, like is Burks playing for Oklahoma?
I don't know for sure.
I don't know.
We'll keep our eyes on all of that. Again, a lot of these things are going to be thanks to our new injury report world. We'll actually get to find out for at least some of these SEC games as we get a little bit closer to kickoff. Well, speaking of SEC games, coming up on the other side, we begin big game breakdown with a look at the Red River Rivalry, Texas and Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. All that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. It is it's one of the most unique settings in all of college football. It is half the stadium in the burnt orange, half the stadium in crimson. I probably had seen it, but just recycled back into my social media feed the video of, I think it was Texas running out of the tunnel, where you hear nothing but boos and then they hit midfield and you hear nothing but cheers. I mean, it's just like it's a really cool spot. And that will be where we find the number one team in the AP Top 25 poll with the Texas Longhorns taking on their bitter rival, Oklahoma, coming into this game. They've already made the quarterback change. They had that big fourth quarter comeback against Auburn. And now they've got a week, hopefully, speaking of Deion Burks, to try to get as healthy as possible and get the game plan dialed in for the Longhorns. Quinn Ewers, we are expecting will be making his return after his tummy ache knocked him out for a couple of weeks. Hey, listen, let's just start there. I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a strong performance. Like if we're saying like, do you think that Quinn Ewers is going to look rusty? Maybe for a little bit, but I tend to believe that everything that's happened over the course of the last 3-4 weeks has always been eyeing October 12th as his return to action. And I think that there's probably something that's been a little bit comforting in his recovery process of knowing that you're aiming for this to make sure you are full go. I think that while the challenge is tough against Oklahoma's defense, from a health perspective, I think we're going to get close to the best of Quinn Ewers.
Maybe. I mean, but it is concerning to have not played for however many weeks it is at this point and then be facing this defense. Like, it's a very good defense you're going to be going up against. So I don't know if he's going to come out and look great. I don't expect that he'll be my theory is we won't see him asked to do a whole ton.
Sure.
Like, I think you're going to have a lot of quick
true.
game, get the ball out fast, make sure he doesn't have to. If it's been an oblique injury or whatever it's been, I don't know how much you're going to see him firing the ball down the field. Probably going to be a lot of shorter throws. So I don't know. I think Texas is going to want to run the ball a lot here and have to be effective.
I mean, Venables ate his lunch last year in the first half.
Yeah.
Allowing Oklahoma to build that lead. So, does he see it well this year? I think this Texas offensive line is going to be the best that Oklahoma has seen and probably the best that it will see all year. So, like, from that standpoint, you got to think that on a standard rush, he should be fairly well protected. But like Texas, they did a decent job against Michigan too. So, like, I think he probably should be pretty well protected. I am curious how Texas decides, if they do decide to attack differently than what they did last year. Because obviously, like, Oklahoma anticipated what they were going to do last year exceptionally well. And I'm not trying to imply like the sign stealing thing there,
stallion stuff,
right? But I mean, they were on it pretty good. I think ultimately, like, how many points wins this game for Texas? If I'm Steve Sarkisian,
15.
No. 27.
I think 20. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say 24.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm confident. I mean, Oklahoma, we don't know who they're going to get back at receiver, but they scored 14 offensive points on Auburn or 17, whatever that was. And they had the pick six. What they score against Tennessee?
Not
many.
12, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't much.
I mean, they put like 30-ish, I think, on Tulane. They scored like 20, maybe like 26 against Houston. I think this is the best defense they will have seen. To me, like, that's the issue. It's just, if Texas doesn't screw this up with turnovers, I have a hard time finding a real path for Oklahoma to win the game. They could cover. I mean, 15 is a pretty big number when you're playing a real defense. I mean, that's slower paced game from you maybe, and a couple red zone stops before field goals, and all of a sudden you're covering. But for Oklahoma to win, I think they probably need multiple, like, either defensive scores or short field setup scores.
Well, that's where, if you're Oklahoma, I think it is you want to shorten the game. You want the margin to be as close as possible going into that fourth quarter. If there's any kind of like doubt you can create on the sideline with this Texas coaching staff, if there's any kind of doubt that you can create with your quarterback in Quinn Ewers, like, I agree with you, Bud. Oklahoma needs turnovers. Oklahoma needs Texas to allow Oklahoma to remain in the game. And I see a lot of trying to slow play this from Oklahoma offensively, because more possessions does not equal a better chance to win at all.
That's not been what they like to do typically.
No.
I mean, they've gone a little slower this year overall compared to prior years, but I mean, not a ton slower. Like, does OU worry that it sacrifices some of the advantage that it has for being a tempo team by slowing it down? Like, that, I think that's sort of like the give and take. Venables clearly brought in a tempo, staff, right? That's what he likes to coach with. And I mean, if you don't go up tempo with this offense, can you score? Like, are you going to catch, like,
you think that they're just not good enough?
I don't think the tempo matters, honestly.
Well, but if the idea is like to catch him by surprise,
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? Like maybe they just need to play their game. I don't know. Like I think if you gave OU 20, they would take that right now. It's all right, fine. We'll try to find a way to just have an insane defensive performance.
Here's hold on. From Grant in the chat. Is OU the best offense Texas has faced? No.
Would that
Here's
be
we
ULM?
talk about like how bad the offenses have been, Michigan, Purdue, Houston, Florida State, all these teams. If you look at the Power Four, Oklahoma's offense is worse than most of those, or at least in the same vicinity in just about every kind of category you look at. And like they rarely get to the red zone, but when they do, they finish well. So that's like the one thing that they have going for them. It's just I tweeted it this morning. What's the stat? Like the only team in the country with a lower or a higher 3-and-out rate than Oklahoma right now, which is at 43.1% in the Power Four, is Purdue. Their explosive play rate at 8.2% is dead last in the Power Four, thanks to Wisconsin getting to play Purdue. I mean, this offense stinks. It is not good. Like the offensive line has been bad. They've been able to run the ball and pop some big runs, and I think a lot of that is due to the quarterback change and just getting that 11-on-11 kind of thing going. But overall, like it's been very, very porous. And maybe your receivers are healthy this week and come back, and that helps you get some stuff going that you just haven't really had the opportunity to do. But based on what I have seen, like I go back to the Tennessee game, which was another very good defense that Oklahoma faced, and they couldn't do anything. And then they made the quarterback change late. I just don't. I get that in a rivalry game, you can never be 100% sure what's going to happen. Wild stuff does happen. But I just have so little faith in this Sooners team to put points on the board here without their defense doing it. Like if Quinn Ewers is throwing, interceptions or they're fumbling and putting Oklahoma in good spots, then maybe they can. But if they're not doing that, if Texas just takes care of the football, like I said, I don't think they need to score more than 15 points to win this game.
15 feels low, but I understand your point. Like their team total is like 17.
Mm-hmm. Under.
Over, under 2.5 quarterbacks in this game.
Over, because Quinn will be sitting in the sidelines in the fourth quarter.
That is, or it goes so poorly that Oklahoma does like a break glass in case of emergency and just throws Arnold out there to look for a spark.
Mm-hmm.
Is Arnold's not redshirting, right?
I mean, how many games is he?
Well, I think we'll find. Hold on. Well, I think we might find out in this game.
Yeah,
I think he would have played 4 because he did not play against Auburn, correct?
I don't think so. But I mean, I think he's still eligible, but I don't know if he's officially redshirt. Yeah, he's played 4 games. I don't know if he's officially redshirting, but would you be shocked if that's kind of going on behind the scenes?
Definitely not. And I don't have, like, I'm literally just in running the probability since Chip threw that out there with the 2.5. I was like, wait, is he actually somebody they would consider playing, or like, is he one of these pseudo redshirt guys? Because they made the official switch after the 4th game.
We're gonna need a camera on Jackson Arnold at all times just to see if there's any of this sitting back like, oh, we need you in. No, I'm good.
I do think Oklahoma can win. Like, I don't think they will win, but that defense is good enough to where the scenarios that we were discussing with forcing a bunch of turnovers, those aren't insane. Like
Correct.
Those could happen for sure. Like Ewers is not always super careful with the ball. Texas run game has not been amazing, so they got to probably put it in the air a lot, and that's been.
It hasn't had to be.
That's true.
I mean, like they had to get that motor going against Michigan, and they gave you 30 awesome minutes, and the game was over.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fair.
so it's like they just have, and I'm not saying this as a reason to doubt what Texas's ceiling is. Like I think Texas is awesome. I have zero doubts about where Texas's ceiling is at. I just think that in the rhythms of a college football season, there could be some adjustment period in this game just because, I mean, they were up 24-3 at halftime of the Michigan game and have been able relatively to coast since then. That was on September 7th.
I don't think this game will look that much different than the Michigan game. Like
Just jump up and sit on it.
Yeah, like they could bury him pretty quickly, and it's just when I break this matchup down, It's like I try to find the area on any of these teams where I like Oklahoma better. And the only one I feel like is comparable is the pass rush and the dudes that they have on the defensive line. Like, I don't think there's a huge gap between that. But like you mentioned earlier, Bud, Texas offensive line, like Tennessee, we talked about it last week. Their offensive line isn't great.
Yeah.
Texas's is. So I think that they could have more problems here than they've had. And it's like, if you're going to be relying on your defense to win you this game, yeah, it's possible. I just don't think it's a really, truly reliable, solution.
Any other last matchup thoughts?
If is this the first team that can really shut down Texas and really has a good shot shut down Texas in the red zone?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I guess in theory, Michigan would have had a shot. They just failed to
The
do
Michigan secondary is just outside of will.
Yeah. The coaching there has not been great. So, like that's the other way this happens: turnovers and field goals. Like you win these big ball games by scoring touchdowns. If Texas had kicked field goals, it's tough.
Yeah, I think you let that one fly on CBS Sports Network yesterday. But Bud's like, I think Michigan had a little bit of a downgrade on the defensive staff, and Tom just goes, "Yup."
We can spend. I think it's pretty easy to know what's coming right now.
It's still a good defense.
They still have a lot of good players, but we are getting more and more comfortable with that CBS Sports Network show and the rhythms of a different kind of interface. And that was certainly one of those moments where I really felt like we were letting our YouTube show sort of shine through.
I was going to say, I get Grantham vibes. That's all.
Yep. Say it again for the people in the back, Bud. All right. Let's turn our attention to Saturday night as Ole Miss will be going to play LSU. You may remember that when these two teams played in Oxford, the final score was 55-49. They combined for more than 1,300 yards of total offense. And while Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors are off to the NFL, well, Garrett Nussmeier is still the number 5 player in the country in terms of passing yards per game. He's currently leading the SEC with 15 passing touchdowns. So maybe we're going to be set for something similar here. Bud, which part? Obviously, Trey Harris, as we mentioned at the top of the show, probably pretty significant. What part of this matchup stands out to you the most?
Ole Miss's defense has been really good.
Yeah.
So far this season.
Up front, especially.
The best offense they've faced has been Wake Forest.
It's a fun game to play, isn't it?
Kentucky at times, I guess, but like it's not like Kentucky ran Ohio out of the building or like they certainly melted down against South Carolina. Although,
how about this? In terms of scheme and coaching, Wake Forest. In terms of bodies, Kentucky.
Probably, yeah. That's probably a good way to put that. And you got Kentucky at home, so I am curious, like how I'm confident this Ole Miss defense is good and better than it was. How much better is it? Like, is it hold LSU to something in the 30s, or like can LSU get into the 40s here? And if so, how much better does LSU's defense look? Like, if they're going to make a jump, I'm kind of convinced this is the game to show the jump has been made. You just came off a bye week, and prior to that, you just played not an FCS team, but a G5 team in South Alabama.
That is Tom's South Alabama Jags, potential Sun Belt champions.
Come on. That loss at Arkansas State just
tough. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just really excited to watch the Ole Miss defensive front against the LSU offensive line, because I think that's a lot of NFL kind of players going back and forth at one another, and it should be pretty decent. Because, like, obviously we know about Walter Nolan was the big get in the transfer portal. He doesn't have like eye-popping stats, but if you actually just kind of watch what he's doing, it's like, oh, okay, no, he's pretty damn good. And Princely Uman is playing very well. Jared Ivey's playing very well for them up front. I just think that is a very deep, and it's been a very effective unit. It's just, again, like we were just going over, you're playing Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, and South Carolina so far to this point. I just don't know So you haven't faced anything like you're going to be going up against with this LSU offensive line. You haven't faced anything like you're going up against with this quarterback, who I think is miles ahead of any quarterback that you have faced so far this season. So we're going to find out a whole hell of a lot more about everybody on every level of that defense. And I just think that it's an interesting situation overall because, like, I think obviously Ole Miss losing to Kentucky kind of throws things off of whack, but you're still in a situation where even after that loss, which, by the way, it was at home, you're favored on the road against LSU. And it's like coming into Death Valley as a favorite to me. Just, I get why, but there's still that part of me that's like, that typically doesn't work out very well for teams. But when you look at the LSU defense, we're so focused on the secondary, which is, yeah. But I do think up front, they've actually been pretty solid this year. Like, they do a very good job of getting pressure on teams. It's just their secondary can't cover anybody. So if they're facing a QB who's able to at least withstand that pressure and get rid of the ball, they're giving up big chunk plays time and time again, and it's killing them. So Trey Harris's injuries we talked about, that's going to be a huge factor here. But I just think Ole Miss has plenty of weapons in the passing game. And I think Jackson Dart has been phenomenal this season, outside of that Kentucky game where I thought he wasn't bad, but he wasn't his typical brilliant self. So we've seen him under pressure play well. If LSU gets pressure on them, Ole Miss is the kind of team that could get those chunk plays on you if your guys aren't covering them or just making mistakes. Like, Lane Kiffin offenses have a great way, or they have a great history of making defensive backs look stupid and putting them in bad situations and making them blow coverages, et cetera, whatever you want to call it. That is a scary thing for me if I'm LSU. So I feel like I can't just get pressure. I need to get home. And I need to force some turnovers here because offensively, I don't know if you want to get stuck in a shootout, because even though I really think you have a tremendous quarterback and tremendous weapons on offense, if I'm relying on either one of these defenses to actually end up getting a stop, even if they haven't faced anybody yet, I still have more confidence in Ole Miss being able to do it.
So I don't know that Princely's playing. He missed the South Carolina game. Well, he missed South Carolina game. Chat thinks he's out for this game, but I don't think that's official. I think I said this on the Saturday Night Show. Dart did not look right to me.
Oh yeah, South that's Carolina.
Right. Like, I'm not saying he's hurt, but something was going on, in my opinion.
He got
and
shot.
Like, just some of the deep balls were not good. This is fair. Oh my God!
Did you see him quoting Young Dolph on Twitter? He retweeted he retweeted a screenshot of Dylan Stewart like standing over him with a shotgun, and I can't. It's something like took 100 shots and still couldn't hit, something like that.
I think it's a pretty it's a really big game for Ole Miss. It's a really big game for LSU too. Like, if you don't win this coming off a bye, just coming off the run up, and has Ole Miss had a bye yet?
So
they have not, right?
This is their 7th game. They're on the bye.
That's a weird matchup, like, for a very rested team playing at home against a team that's probably not rested. That's you're going to give them like the full 3 for home field there in Death Valley, but like, you probably are also going to give them, I don't know, maybe an extra point or something for like attrition.
Second straight home game. I mean, excuse me, second straight road game, 7th game in a row. I mean, I understand why Lane Kiffin put his foot off the gas in the second half of that game. I mean, you just needed to get out of there and stay as healthy as possible heading into this one against LSU. Going back to the question about, the offenses that have been played, what about the passing attacks that Ole Miss's secondary has been challenged by? This will be their greatest challenge.
No doubt.
By a lot.
All right. You ready for anything else matchup wise before we go into the straight vibes corner on this matchup?
Oh, we should get like some kind of graphic or soundboard for the vibes corner.
I really don't know if we're going to have
it should be a recurring segment.
Since Nick Saban arrived in Baton Rouge in 2000, there have been 123 games at night in Tiger Stadium. LSU is 108-15 in those games.
Damn.
That includes being a perfect 12-0 under Brian Kelly in night games at Tiger Stadium. Brian Kelly as a whole, any opponent, any kickoff time, 16-1 in Tiger Stadium. The home team in this series is 10-2 across the last 12 and has covered the spread in 9 of the last 10 and won the last 4 outright.
I think I know what Chip's locking up tomorrow. He's got all his research ready. That means Chip's been doing some work.
I'm trying to think about the losses. Like Saban's got to have 3 or 4 of those to his credit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, one of them was the grass game. Who was that? Or no, what was the one where they? No, that was Dooley who messed up. So that was
Did Florida get him in a night game?
One. So the Arkansas, if it wasn't Coach O's last game in 21, it was like November of 21 is the last time they've lost at home at night. That was Coach O's last season. I can't remember if he was gone or had agreed to go by then. And that was an Arkansas team that was actually ranked in the top 25. They were number 25 coming into the game. They kick a field goal as time expires to win 13-10. So it's been since November 13th, 2021 that LSU has lost a night game in Tiger Stadium. Damn. That being one of the 15 instances that has happened going all the way back to 2000.
You let Cajuns eat and drink all day. It's a raucous environment.
True.
Insane stuff. Yeah, no, that was one of those where Tom, that was my pick story this week.
Mm-hmm.
And like at the beginning of the week, I'm looking at it when on Tuesday on HQ, I'm just sort of just throwing out the vibes like, come on, you give me LSU plus points at night. Come on, LSU. And then you open up the stat packet, shout out to LSU Sports Information. You start getting those numbers. You're like, holy cow. So some science to back up the facts right there.
My pick story this week was Notre Dame Stanford, so I don't have nearly as much fun kind of numbers there.
I mean, yeah, I'll tell you how many numbers. It's like, okay, we need 200 words for this intro. We're going to do 203. Okay,
did you know that Notre Dame's won 19 straight home games against ACC opponents? Because I know that now.
Yeah, there we go.
Can you tell me when the streak began to give you another 10 words?
They lost to Virginia Tech in 2017, I want to say it was.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who the Vatech quarterback was in 2017. Was it Tyrod Taylor?
No, in 2017, Tyrod Taylor's like.
Oh no.
Gerard Evans won. Gerard Evans led Virginia Tech.
Logan Thomas?
No,
it might have been. It was Josh Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who then went to go play for Maryland. But Gerard Evans led Virginia Tech to the ACC title game in 2016. That was that Fuente first year. Everybody's like, God, this guy's amazing. And, the Fuente era continued.
It was it was the 2016 season. And it was Josh Jackson.
How about him?
Damn.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we continue our big game breakdown with more notes on Ohio State, Oregon. Big 12 corner featuring Iowa State, Kansas State on the road and tough challenges. And BYU getting a test from the chaos team that is the Arizona Wildcats. All that and more next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast again on Tuesdays, CBS Sports Network show, which you can go and check out in our YouTube channel on demand, on the podcast feed, wherever you get it. We've also got a little breakout of this game in terms of our big game breakdown for Ohio State's trip to Eugene to go play Oregon. We constrained by commercial breaks. We sometimes have to keep it a little snappy. So I wanted to at least save some time here on Wednesday's show. Any more thoughts that we didn't get into, or any more things as we've continued to think about and break this game down on the matchup?
I've been yelled at by Oregon fans a lot the last 24 hours because I talked about Dylan Gabriel's turnover problems, and I didn't mention that Will Howard has also thrown interceptions. So I will say that Will Howard has also thrown 3 interceptions this year. Difference is he hasn't thrown 3 red zone interceptions in the last 2 weeks. That's what I was talking about yesterday.
That'll be a key for sure. I do think this is the best set of defensive linemen overall that Ohio State has faced, particularly in terms of like the beef up front to stop the run. And so if you are Oregon, you don't want to play a 2-dimensional Ohio State offense. I'm relatively confident Ohio State's defense will show up and play pretty well. But ultimately, like if Ohio State's offense can run and pass, then they'll win the game. I think, because I'm confident their defense will get enough stops. But if you can make them 1-dimensional, and Will Howard's not an amazing thrower. Okay, like neither of these guys. I imagine both these guys are probably going to go pro in something other than sports. At least like if that's something else, is like be a backup quarterback in the NFL or something like that. I don't think they're like high draft choices, So making them throw more if you're Oregon is really pretty big. That would be the additional thing I would add here.
Do you ever wonder like what Jeremiah Smith would look like with CJ Stroud?
Holy cow, dude.
That's one thing I've been thinking. It's like maybe he wouldn't have to make all these one-handed catches if he was playing with CJ Stroud.
I was thinking about this with Jeremiah. The run, Chris, and the ones that I've been thinking about specifically were Chris Olave to Garrett Wilson to Marvin Harrison Jr. All of them flashed as a freshman and then really like jumped into the alpha spot as a sophomore. And he's fast forwarded. He's in the alpha spot as a freshman.
Yeah.
I would still say
Buka's played well though.
The alpha, but yeah, I think that Jeremiah is a tremendous player, and I would argue he's the best receiver in the country at this point, talent-wise. But I still think Ibuka's the alpha. I think he had 3 touchdowns last week.
The get it and go that Ibuka has is really, really impressive.
When he took that little 4-yard slant and then just took off 70 yards a couple weeks ago without being touched.
I do think like preseason, it was generally a consensus out there in a lot of the media and a lot of like the models that it was Georgia, Ohio State, slight gap, Texas, Oregon, slight gap, everybody else. Some of the coverage this week, and I hope this is not from us, this is not the way I intended to come off, has been like Oregon has sucked. And I don't think they have, right? They just haven't looked like a true top 4 team. Like they've still looked like a top 10, top 15-ish type team for a lot of the season. And like even a number 1 team can go on the road to a really hard place to play and lose to a top 10 or top 15 level team. Like even if we don't really think Oregon's a top 5 type team, which at this point, I don't think they've played like one.
I mean, rewind 5 days, bud.
Yeah, right.
Saturday night.
Exactly.
I think that like Oregon's offensive line really struggled the first few weeks while they were dealing with a bunch of injuries. They still are dealing with some injuries, but the unit overall has improved. And I think like part of those preseason projections were, I think we underestimated how important Bo Nix was and how good he was at running this offense. And there has been a downgrade at the quarterback spot, I think, as far as performance is concerned. And I think that hurts Oregon. And I think, too, I mentioned yesterday in a big game breakdown, their receivers to me have been, outside of Tez Johnson, have been very underwhelming. So, like, you're right. Like, Ohio State can go on the road and lose this game because Oregon's still a very good team. It's just when it comes to, like you mentioned, like the top 4 projections as far as talent and roster at the beginning of the season, those other 3 teams, I feel like have mostly lived up to those expectations, although Georgia's struggling a little bit at some spots. Oregon, to me, has had more players who didn't live up to what I think we were expecting.
Who does this beautiful weather favor? I mean, 2-mile-an-hour wind, 4% chance of rain. Like, it looks like it's going to be just a nice 71-degree day or night.
Ohio State.
Why?
I was kind of thinking Ohio State's a little more equipped to be like a team playing in the muck. I mean, I know Oregon is turf, but like, I mean, so it's not impacted as much. But
I liked what Tom said on the show yesterday in terms of the way that Oregon with the offensive line changes and improvement have really relied on the run game to like establish that. Because that's something else. You know who they missed? They missed Bucky Irving. Because Bucky Irving is also showing us like at the next level, that guy's a player.
Yeah.
And I think
Chicago
that
zone. Chicago's own
Bucky Irving. How about that? But even if we had like rain or like down in the muck, I think the work that Oregon has done to improve the ground game over the last couple of weeks against like a UCLA defense that lacks a few bodies, but still has been playing hard and looking pretty good out there. Michigan State, obviously huge talent deficit from what they could have been, including the guy that's over there playing defense for Oregon. I think that they would be able to win even in adverse conditions.
Yeah, and I do think like one of the things Ohio State's going to have to deal with is, they've been home all year. This is going to be a much more different and like a very loud, very hectic environment because Autzen Stadium, I wish it was raining a little bit, but Ohio State should be lucky it's not. But I just think that stadium gets really, really loud. Its fans are going to be, this is a huge game. It's a top 3 matchup. It's like Oregon's first chance to kind of make the statement since joining the Big Ten about who it is. I just think this is going to be an electric environment. We're going to see if Ohio State, with Will Howard, and who's not really used to playing in these environments, like, can he handle it?
100%. All right. As we start to look at some of those big matchups in the Big 12, Kansas State at Colorado, Iowa State at West Virginia, BYU playing host to Arizona. Tom, which of those 3 is starting to, are you starting to mull over? You're starting to look at and have a lot of interest.
It's tough to really just kind of limit. The BYU thing, I wish that game was at night, but they are good. I just don't know how good they really are. So I'm very interested in that game. But I think the more important game is Iowa State going on the road to West Virginia, because Iowa State has been excellent. They are 5-0. They've beaten Baylor and Houston to start Big 12 play. And you could argue those are the 2 worst teams in the league. So West Virginia has not been great, but going on the road and playing in that stadium against this team, which offensively it's happy to kind of, get some explosives and try to force you to get into a shootout. And if that happens, I don't know if I'm as confident in Iowa State's ability to play that style. So I think, to me, we are going to learn a lot more about the Cyclones this week than we've probably learned. Outside that Iowa game, but Iowa offensively is not the kind of team that really kind of, shocker, going to scare you too much. I think West Virginia has the capability of putting a scare into you and forcing you to score.
I am really not sure what to make of this game. And part of it is because of the recent games played by these teams, who they played them against and who those teams had just played. So like Iowa State got down early to Baylor, and then came back and basically like treated Baylor's defense like it was an FCS team. That was egregious.
It was better. It was a better performance than they had against the FCS team, actually, if we're going to use the FCS example. Iowa State's an offensive profile.
And so Baylor's defense is not great. We thought it was decent to start the season. I was much more confident in Baylor's defense than I was its offense to start the season. And it looks like that's kind of flip-flopped a little bit because Sawyer Robertson's still playing pretty decent ball for Baylor. But like 2 weeks ago, Baylor had given up a bunch of points to BYU. And BYU certainly like no great shakes on offense so far this year. Meanwhile, West Virginia just crushed an Oklahoma State team that probably has to be put on quit watch. Like, is West Virginia's defense actually fixed, or did it just play an Oklahoma State team that appears to be in total disarray? Because, guys, Kansas moved the ball pretty well on the Mountaineers. Penn State, they moved it pretty well. Like, a lot of teams have moved it on these guys. Pitt moved it pretty well on them, so like, how good is this Iowa State offense? How bad is this West Virginia defense?
Okay, step into my office. Okay,
let's do this.
Consider everything that's happened since the lightning delay on September 21st, because West Virginia comes back in that game. And you're right. Like, Kansas had been running the ball effectively, but West Virginia got the stops they needed, had a little bit of hero ball, worked it down the field. And I'm not going to say stole one, but definitely came out of that lightning delay and like found a way to win that one at home. You go into the off week with this confidence, like, all right, we were right there against Pitt. We've got ourselves in a position where we're 2-2. Let's see what we can do. And they come out of the off week and they put Oklahoma State's season in a body bag. Yep. It is 31-7 by halftime. They have 315 yards of offense at halftime. The confidence that is with this West Virginia group that we saw 1 year ago, like, exceed its sort of like on paper rating and expectations. The confidence is high right now with West Virginia. I think that a pick for West Virginia is a little bit of a vibes-based play based on the way that the last couple weeks have gone. You were right to point out, like, well, let's take a look at, like, what was going on with each of these teams at the time. I just think that it's like you come out, you get the Kansas game, you go into the off week, and then you come back and you have such a strong statement right out the gate. It's really hard for me to think that West Virginia won't be able to, like, play at a high level and match Iowa State across the board in those sense.
Makes sense. I kind of need to see it from the Mountaineers against a team that's decent before I buy in. But maybe they could do it. Like, the offense, I think, is pretty good.
We got a Abu Sama update.
Nothing
for my fantasy team. I hope so. Shoot.
Damn, Big 12 is one of those leagues doesn't have to tell us everything that's going on. I really look forward to that day when we could just look up an injury report and know.
Some of those teams, they do, like Texas Tech releases.
They do. That's nice.
You know what? I like Texas Tech now. Extend Joey McGuire.
All right. What about Kansas State at Colorado?
I think this is fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So Kansas State's pass coverage this year and pass rush has not been great. I don't know that this is a great matchup for the Kansas State defense. Also, some relatively defenses have done an okay job against this Colorado offense. Like, we just mentioned how Baylor got torched by BYU and by Iowa State. Well, they really only allowed like 2 significant plays in that game against Colorado in the overtime loss. Like, the one, the guy clearly slips down and Webster makes an incredible, like, Shedeur and Webster made insane catches, and also the defender fell down. So, yeah, that play. And then you had the play where, Amari Miller, like, Baylor thinks he's down and he's not down, and he gets up and he runs the rest of the way. Like, other than that, they handled it pretty well. So some mediocre defenses have done an okay job this year against Colorado, but they also have had some big time games against some okay defenses. Like, but what category do you put UCF in? Because right now I'm a little like UCF defense. I'm not entirely sure defending the pass if you guys are with it right now. And can we get a decent game out of Riley?
Avery Johnson.
Avery.
Sorry, why am I saying Riley? Shoot. Out of Avery Johnson on the road?
It's another quarterback at the power conference level that you would prefer him running to pushing the ball down the field.
No doubt. And they faced a couple mobile quarterbacks so far this year, right? North Dakota State ran it on them some. I know that Baylor with Robertson tried to do it quite a bit. And KJ doesn't really look right to me, the quarterback for UCF. So I don't know. Like, I assume they're going to run the heck out of him.
I just know that facing a defense that plays a lot of man with a quarterback who can scramble and is very fast.
Oh, so you're saying that when you've got your back to the quarterback, those are going to become problematic moments.
I'm just saying that, there could be a situation in which Avery Johnson has plenty of room to run.
That's fair.
Even if it's not designed.
How differently does Kansas State defend the Colorado run game? Can't believe I'm saying this statement, but Colorado showed an ability to run against UCF for the first time, like, literally ever during the Deion tenure. So that's important to take a note of. Like, will teams have to play them differently than UCF did, or will they continue to employ the same plan that largely worked for Baylor and for some of those teams? They just executed a little bit better than what UCF did.
And let's see. What else? What else do we want to hit before we get out of here?
Shoot. It's a nice little weekend of games. You do anything with this with like any of the weeknight stuff?
I took the under tonight, but I don't. I only have one game, and I have to make a pick.
That's a tough spot, I think, for Jacksonville State to play that. Like, you get New Mexico State off a bye, Jack State has to turn around, and they have like 4 days rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's not easy. New Mexico State's not good, but that's not super easy.
On Open, Chipolytics had a hold your nose and take it for both FIU and New Mexico State.
Is Cam Rising going to play?
No, he's dead.
Dead.
I love this bit every week.
He's been dead.
Yeah, did y'all see Whittingham's statements this week?
I did, and I already forgot what he said.
Well, fair, given the credibility there when it comes to Cam Rising updates. But he said, we have discussed internally like a breaking point. He said, we have discussed that, there's going to be a point where if he's not good to go, it's just going to be Isaac Wilson's team from here on out. And then he would not share when that time is. But it kind of makes me think that it's past.
He's dead.
I don't know. Like, Wilson's not very good, in my opinion. So,
no, I mean, it greatly impacts what I think of Utah going forward if he's not playing.
It impacts the Big 12 race directly.
Yeah. Another game I'm interested in this weekend, Florida, Tennessee. Not because Florida obviously beat UCF last week, and that's good for them because they needed it. But Tennessee coming off that loss to Arkansas, I want to see how they bounce back, if they bounce back, because they've also got another big game coming. So this is one of those weird, tricky spots for them.
Can the Gators replicate the Arkansas plan? I don't know. I think schematically possibly, but the difference could be that I don't know that Florida has the same level of defensive ends that Arkansas does. Specifically, like Landon Jackson was giving hell all game.
But I mean, tell me if you see this the same way. Like, I do think that Florida has impressed me on the interior of the defensive line, and in that Tennessee game, it looked like Arkansas was kind of getting a little bit of a push to get Nico off his spot.
That's how they won the game last year too. Yep. I mean, Cade or Cooper Mays didn't play. The center, the Tennessee center, who's pretty good. And then also last year, recall, was it the right tackle or right guard who got popped for weed, like literally the night before they were set to fly to Gainesville? So that was a surprise.
Tackle.
I forgot the kid's name, but like they were basically down 2 guys, and they played like in total disarray. And again, like all credit to Florida, they whipped them. Yeah.
Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Chip. Do your heels bounce back?
So it's interesting. I know that we've hit that point, and whatever that point means, in that there would be a lot more frustration, consternation, or reaction to the idea that you're a 6-point underdog at home to Georgia Tech. And I have not heard a peep. It is an acceptance. That's the best way I can hit it. I can't say that it's full apathy, but it is an acceptance. And I don't think that there is even and I'm speaking from like my friends, the guys I went to school with, like they're just this sort of situation would otherwise be like, oh no, come on, like we got to get, everyone's like, yeah, okay, we'll see what happens out there. So an acceptance of the product on the field rather than a demand for improvement.
Can I get in the trust tree with you guys?
Sure.
Just between us 3 and then the tailgate. Don't go telling anybody I said this. Kind of nervous about Illinois this weekend because this is just a situation where they're coming off a bye, facing a team that's been absolutely awful. They're favored by nearly 20 points.
Is it at 21 yet? I know you gave me the heads up.
No, it's at 19.5. But my entire life as an Illini fan tells me it's like, oh no. There are way too many things going in our favor for this game. And plus, we've always just struggled with Purdue in recent years.
I know.
So there's a tiny little bit of me that's like, oh, God, please don't mess this up. But just keep that between all of us.
When Illinois-Michigan got named as the big-time game on CBS for next week, I went back to that 2022 season, the crap calls and like all the Indiana game and the Michigan game, and just like the razor thin margin that Illinois had from having like one of those years for your whole program history. And then I saw that getting Jeff Bromd in there too was a real kick in the ass.
Two things on that. One, you saw Purdue decided to like just go insanely slow tempo last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were bottom 4 in the country in tempo. So that's a pretty notable change out there. I think it's already baked into the number because like it's a Wednesday and people have already bet these totals. But if you're handicapping at home, if you're still using the up tempo modifier on Purdue, I think that's probably not correct. Just based on one game of behavioral change with the new OC. Also, I don't know if you caught this, but like Bama losing, I'm sure you saw, but like the inability for Bama fans to handle losing is like, did you see the article that Goodman wrote? I know it's partially satire, but like, holy cow, the number of people who are seriously sharing this is just beautiful.
And by the way, all the coaches were wearing polos at the midweek availability.
Yeah. I know we're over.
I kind of want Kalen DeBoer to embrace it and like just dress up like Go Dirt and win by 70 against South Carolina. Like you want to get embraced by Alabama fans, bro.
Show up in an Alabama tank top on Saturday.
But Moore was talking about how he was frustrated they couldn't get the defensive calls in fast enough. Which, if he means like adjustments and checks and stuff, I do get that. However, do you know who went the slowest tempo in the entire country last week by a full standard deviation? Yes, by a full standard deviation over the second slowest team.
Mm-hmm.
When you're using tempo, are you using how much time is left on the play clock? How much time between snaps? Like what do you like to use as your like?
Yeah, so I basically look at a couple factors, right? So what's your success rate? What is the game state? Like, are you up or down? First half, second half. I try to cut out like end of half, end of game stuff because that's clearly like even the super fast or super slow teams are going to slow down or speed up respectively if they have to try to accomplish their goal because of the clocks. Like, so I look for like neutral game state stuff and earlier in the game to me matters more. You got to use more than just like the first couple drives because like that's your script could be slower or faster depending on things. But I look at that like. So on my sheet, I've got a little formula, but team name, then I pull like offensive success rate, time of possession per play, rush, pass, completion, incompletion, touchdowns. Obviously, the clock doesn't run on touchdowns, so got to kind of adjust for that. So like, okay, like how many seconds are you taking off per basically like per play where the clock is running, and like how are you treating it when the clock is not running? And just try to go from there. But Vandy was very, very slow intentionally. Like they've been slow on purpose and they should be. But I found that interesting from Moore. So maybe he means like the checks and stuff and not just the actual call.
You know what the Alabama stuff reminds me of?
What?
And like we talked about this when the Saban retired and they brought in DeBoer. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle not being perfect. But it kind of reminds me of the situation we saw not that long ago, in that if you think about it, there's a whole generation of Alabama fans who don't understand that Alabama can be anything other than the greatest team on the planet. Right. And human beings in general have very short attention spans. So even the people who are old enough to remember what Alabama was like before Saban have kind of forgotten what Alabama was like before Saban because you just grow accustomed to it. But now we've seen, like, we've had Damian, who works for us, sharing his thoughts. We've had lots of Alabama fans or former players sharing their thoughts about the culture and how things used to be and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. There was once a dynasty full of NFL players who went to the pros, who then retired, who then became media personalities. It was the Miami Hurricanes. And every week when Miami was struggling, you would see former Hurricanes talking about the way things were and how they're supposed to be and blah, blah, blah. I think that's where we are now with Alabama, whereas it's like the way it's supposed to be is just not the way it is anymore. Like the Nick Saban thing, Nick Sabans don't fall off of trees, man. That was a very, very special thing. And I think Kalen DeBoer is a very good football coach, and I think he's going to win a lot of games at Alabama as long as they give him the chance. But you can't hold this program to that standard because there is no program that could really meet that standard. And it's it's one of those things where I think you do yourself a disservice, because we saw Miami go through it for years where everybody would be super pissed off because they weren't the dynasty that they were anymore. So they'd keep firing all these coaches and moving on to the next guy. And it took them so long to get back to an era where they are now, where at least they're kind of trending in the right direction. So if you're an Alabama fan or you're a former Alabama player with a platform, exercise some more patience. That's just my advice to you.
I like it.
Let's do it.
That's good stuff. All right. We will be back on Thursday. It is your favorite time of the week, and honestly, ours too, 11 a.m. Eastern time, so we can give you these Week 7 locks. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Finelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.